Police Accountability Board regular meeting for Wednesday, October 25th, 2023. The PAB has resumed in-person meetings and encourages community members to attend in person. Community members attending in person should observe the health and safety protocols for in-person meetings of Berkeley boards and commissions, as outlined by the City of Berkeley. The PAB acknowledges that physical attendance may not be feasible for all community members. To this end, the Office of the Director of Police Accountability has been exploring the option of allowing for remote participation at the PAB meetings. Please note that the ODPA and the PAB are in the early stages of implementing this hybrid meeting format, so there is a possibility for technical glitches and errors. Your patience and understanding are greatly appreciated. To access the meeting remotely, join from a PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, Android device using this URL listed below. If you do not wish for your name to appear on the screen, use the drop-down menu and click on Rename to rename yourself to be anonymous. To request to speak, use the raise hand icon on the screen. To join by phone, dial 1-669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 826-5339-6072. If you wish to comment during the public comment portion of the agenda, press star 9 and wait to be recognized. And for our listening is our land acknowledgement that you can find within our within our agenda this evening. And that brings us to a roll call.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just for the record, we call it to order at 6:30 p.m. I'll start with Chair Moore.
Here.
Vice Chair Harris is on his excused absence. Board Member Calavita.
Here.
Board Member Leftwich.
Here.
Board Member Wilson is currently absent. Board Member Blackaby.
Here.
And Board Member Cayetano. Okay, we have quorum, Chair, and I just want to acknowledge Captain Durbin on behalf of the BPD, DCA Mattis on behalf of the City Attorney's Office, and then, of course, Ms. Corianda Redondo from the City Manager's Office. And on behalf of the ODPA staff, we have Director Aguilar, Investigator Wechter, and myself, Jose Murillo.
And Chair, if I may, just for the record, both you and Board Member Calavita have submitted notifications to the board that you are participating remotely under the just cause provisions of the California Code.
Thank you, Director. And that brings us to agenda item number 2, everyone, the approval of the agenda. Is there any changes, anything that needs to be moved? If not, I'd ask for this to pass without seeing or hearing any objection.
Get the motion. Chair, could I just get the motion for the record?
Yeah, I can't see, so.
I move that we accept the agenda.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. All right. So the motion carries without objection. And Chair, if you're ready, I'm ready to proceed to public comment.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we will now proceed to public comment. Speakers are generally allotted up to 3 minutes to speak, but may be allotted less time if there are many speakers, and they may comment and on any matter within the board's jurisdiction at this time. As always, I will start with those physically present first before I move on to those virtually present. And I will put 3 minutes on the clock. Yes.
Thank you very much. As you know, there's a genocide going on in Gaza right now, perpetuated by the Zionist Israeli government. Over 5,700 Gazans have been killed, majority of them women and children. 55% of Gaza housing has been destroyed. The equivalent of the kids killed would be 250,000 American kids based on the populations. It's insane what's going on there. The reason I bring it up here is many police forces in this states are trained and share information with the Israeli Police Department, mainly on counterterrorism. Now, counterterrorism has mainly been used against Black and brown communities by U.S. military around the world. Now, counterterrorism clicks in the mind of people as they're the enemy, they're brown, they're Black. It's a gross misunderstanding of people which can lead to war crimes, which is going on now. Both of war crimes committed by Hamas and 75 years of oppression committed by the Israeli government in Gaza, the West Bank, and the rest of occupied Palestine, 48. This needs to be kept in mind because with the situation escalating both there and anger growing here, in the States, both sides are equally angry. And at some point, the police will be called in to do something to somebody. Now, I would like to make sure there's no counterterrorism training that kicks in and makes the Black and brown people afraid for their lives in this country, especially the people who are Islamic or Arabic or brown or Black or other than Caucasian. We really need to keep an eye on that. And I really want to emphasize and caution the police that what happened that caused Hamas to rise up the way they did with 75 years of oppression. In other words, people only take so much and shit happens. And it's a lot easier to prevent it than to stop it once it starts. So I advise caution for everybody and just be sure that every step is thoughtful. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Okay, 3 minutes on the clock.
You see right there?
Yes.
Oh, cool. John, I just wanted to thank you for speaking with me, and I have your contact information. But I'm also standing here because I would like to get contact with the captain who's on here now, and maybe he can assist me with my issue. It really has to do with common courtesy. It was a police report that was done that wasn't done accurately by an officer. I have reached out by email to internal affairs, to the officer himself, and I'm not getting a response or correction. The reason, so I know I have a right to edit that report. This is just common courtesy. I'm hoping I don't have to file a report with the police accountability if I can just get people to return my phone call. So maybe you can help me. I do want to say Lieutenant Reese, and I didn't know he was going to be here tonight because I had spoken to him on the phone and he tried to help me to navigate to get the help I needed. So he's aware of my situation. I believe I shared it with him. You can talk to him. So is there some way I can get in contact with you, Captain? I can't really see good. My vision is blurry because I have cancer and I'm in chemo. But I would like to get your name. I would like for you to get my contact information and make contact with me directly. Maybe you can help me navigate through the police department to get the assistance I needed from this office. Does that make sense? I hope I did.
Yeah. If you don't mind if I speak
Sure.
now is okay time. Yeah, I leave your information with Captain Reese and I will get back to you, and I'm sure it sounds like he can give me some information regarding the backstory here. So I'm sorry that you have not gotten the response that you expect at this point, but I'll look into it.
I just want you to know who has tried to help me. I have a right to amend a police report, especially when a lot of information is missing. And it has to do with my character that's being attacked. Over me having a neighbor issue over a fence and then trying to encroach on my property. I am a property owner. Been for 30 years. So I will give him my information. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, John, and I'll speak with you.
Thank you. Okay. I will now move on to our virtual speakers. At this time, are there any attendees attending virtually that would like to provide public comment? Okay. Again, at this time, we are taking virtual public comment. If there are any speakers, please raise your hand now. Chair, at this time, I have no virtual public comment.
Okay, that takes us to agenda item number 4, which is the approval of the minutes. The regular minutes for the meeting on October 11th, 2023. Is there any additions, subtractions, changes? Anything that needs to be altered? And if not, I need a motion.
I move that the minutes be approved.
Second.
Can I just note that I'm abstaining?
Okay. Okay.
Let's go ahead and make it official with the roll call. Vote.
Okay. I'll go ahead. Chair Moore,
Yes.
Board Member Calavita,
Yes,
Board Member Leftwich, and then Board Member Wilson, you abstain, from, and Board Member Blackaby,
Yes.
and Board Member Cayetano. Okay, the motion carries. The minutes are approved.
Excellent. Thank you. And that brings us to agenda item 5, the ODPA staff report. I'll turn it over to you, Director.
Thank you, Chair Moore, board members, community members, fellow staff members. As we noted in the sub item, this year we celebrated as a community 50 years of civilian oversight. And earlier, the ordinance passed in April of this year. But the first meeting I've heard from a community member happened actually October of this year. So this is the 50 years from when oversight body met. So congratulations for making it this far. And it's something to be proud of. We've been talking about it for a few months now to commemorate this event through some sort of community event. So we have saved the date for you. It's December 9th. We want to have a community event and we want to have it here at North Berkeley Center. We were hoping to potentially be in the new space, but we're still working that out. So that's probably not going to be feasible for this date. So we will give you more information as we get closer, but wanted to make sure that you knew about this. It's on a Saturday. And we're happy to take any feedback or work with any board members about anything that they would like to have part of that event. We also wanted to update you. I've been mentioning that we have additional investigator going through a background process. Last week, we did receive the final background report and we have extended a final offer. So we do expect them to begin with our office November 13th. So we'll present them hopefully at an upcoming meeting and you'll get to meet them. And we are still, as I mentioned, working with different stakeholders within the city structure, the city attorney's office and other departments to try to get the lease for the new office space to the city council. So hopefully we could get it to them before this calendar year closes. I do believe that's achievable, but I'll keep you updated as we continue to progress with that. We also wanted just to remind you about the NACO webinars. There's only a few going to be left for this year. If you didn't have the opportunity to participate at the last one, which was about group dynamics, it was a really good one. We tuned in for it and I definitely learned a lot. It'll be available in a few weeks on the NACO website or on YouTube if you want to review that. And this NACO season, actually, for the annual conference, they had an unprecedented situation where they had to close early because they were able to receive enough registration. So that apparently hasn't happened in a while. So that was, I think it was good to see that there's a lot of excitement about attending the conference. We have expressed that we're interested in waitlist opportunities, and I have contacted the executive director, NACO, so if any open up, please let me know if you're still interested, if you haven't already, inform me. Those are the immediate updates. Mr. Murillo, do you have any updates that you want to share, or?
Just tagging on to the NAPOL announcement for training. If you did attend the training, please let me know so that I can log it for your stipends. That's all.
And we do got investigator Wechter, if you wanted to present or if you want to provide any updates.
Do you want to say anything about our attendance at the IACP conference?
Sure. We had the opportunity this year, Investigator Wechter and I, to go down to San Diego for a few days and participate in the International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference. This is my second time that I attended. I went last year when I was still a member of the Charlottesville oversight community. And I always learn a lot. I definitely encourage participation at that conference as well. It's the international conference. There's thousands of people there. I think it's very well organized. They have a lot of evidence-based presentations about the latest in policing, legal updates. We also saw our fellow colleagues from the city there. We ran into them at Chiefs Night. Had a quick chat with them. But I'm always interested in finding ways that we can expose both staff and board members to these opportunities. Investigator Wechter, did you have anything that you want to highlight from there?
It was a wonderful conference. I think the high point for me was when the chief of police of Jason Armstrong, chief of police of Apex in North Carolina, former chief in Ferguson, Missouri, spoke about when he received reports from internal affairs investigators. He would often find there were gaps because officers, would just assume things they understand. But then when civilian investigators did that, those gaps were filled with the details because the civilian investigator felt you want to write it so any layperson would understand it. Not to say that internal affairs investigations aren't good, but he showed one of the benefits of having civilian oversight. And he said those reports withstood scrutiny at disciplinary hearings and arbitrations and appeals. So that was a nice little pat on the back for the work we do in oversight.
Thank you. If you have any questions or comments, we're happy to take them now.
Opening it up to the board. I don't see hands, so if somebody's got something to say, let's just cowboy up here. Okay. I don't believe anyone has anything.
Yep.
Okay. So that will take us to agenda item number 6, which is the chair and board report and board members' reports. I have nothing to report on at this time. I look forward to the NACOL seminar. I look forward to bringing my colleagues along with us. And, that's all that I have at this time. Any board members, would they care to report?
I have a couple things actually that may be recognized by the chair.
You have the floor, sir.
The first is that I'm hoping to attend the NACOL conference if they open up a spot for me. The other two are police focused. The first is that I'm still waiting to hear back from the lieutenant to coordinate my ride along. And I'm hoping to do that in the next couple of weeks. And I'm open to doing it whatever, honestly.
Where are you communicating with?
I was trying to find that information. I can find it within like the next 5 minutes. Right there. Sure, thank you. The other thing is I'm also waiting to hear back from Lieutenant Rittenhouse on my request for information pursuant to policy complaint number 8 that we received last board meeting. I'm hoping to get that response from him within the week, or else we'll have to take further action. So those are my 3 updates.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else from any board members?
Just the statement and then a question. One, I just want to apologize to my fellow commissioners for being gone, board members. I was on a long planned vacation, actually for my 50th birthday, so I missed 2 meetings. So I'm really sorry about that. And it's
Nice to meet you.
and just process wise, I wasn't aware that individual board members were reaching out regarding policy complaints or anything else to the police. I thought that we did that through staff.
So,
No,
I
we,
think-
well, there's, oh, go ahead, Director.
sorry,
Please.
at the last meeting, that particular complaint was assigned to board member Cayetano.
Okay.
So that was why he's, and he reached out to me and I reached out to the chief to find out who the best person in the department is. Cause it might not always be the same contact person.
Okay.
So
got it.
then that's how usually the process goes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's no other board member reports, that will take us to agenda item number 7, which is the chief's report.
One more thing, Chair, the person I was coordinating with for the ride along was Captain Phillips. That's right, pronunciation. I can pick it up. Okay, oh, sure, thank you. Just give me a number over that. Okay.
Captain Durham, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. You know, and I just want to make sure I heard board member Cayetano. It was the ride along response from Rittenhouse. And I thought you said there were 3 things, but I'm not sure I captured the 3rd thing.
No, the first one was just for the board. It was my willingness to attend NACL. Yes.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, on staffing, we'll start with, as we always do. We issued our first payments of hiring bonuses to officers and dispatchers that were hired after January 2021 in accordance with the recruitment and retention incentive program. And we're trying to hope that that causes a little bit of a buzz and to spread that word among not only the recipients of the bonuses, but any city employee who is eligible for a bonus when making a referral. We have been fairly flat with our hiring. We expect to stay fairly flat with our hiring just because we know the number of anticipated departures through the end of the calendar year. So I'm not giving you, the numbers have been about the same, so I'm not going to provide any of the number updates. We're just basically treading water. Cases of interest, crime trends. On the 15th of October, approximately 3:40 in the morning, 2 graveyard officers were conducting late night proactive patrols throughout Berkeley when they saw a LoJack hit on their vehicles for a stolen vehicle. Officers located a stolen Dodge Challenger in the area of 62nd and Dover. And interestingly enough, this was the same vehicle that had fled from us on at least 2 other occasions in the past few weeks. So several officers arrived on scene and the occupants were detained without incident at all. In plain view inside that vehicle, officers saw a loaded assault rifle within arm's reach of 2 occupants in the car. And there was an assortment of burglary tools, drug paraphernalia, items associated with identity theft in the car. So 2 arrests were made in that incident. So just an example of just proactive police work. The next example is an example of kind of responsive police work, but still good police work. Oh, actually, let me back up. I did want to mention something on that previous incident. I had said a couple meetings ago that failures to yield or cars that are not stopping for us seem to be trending upward. And so that example kind of made me recall that I had said that because that car fled from us in the past. And I wanted to let the board know and ODPA that one of the policies that is currently under review for conversion to Lexipol is our pursuit policy, which is V6. When we roll out that new policy, we hope to have it coincide with trainings connected to pursuits because we do anticipate with ALPR that we are going to have more cars potentially getting pulled over and therefore potentially more cars failing to yield. So we just want to make sure that we're tight on our policy and our officers understand the law and our policy. that other example of good police work that I wanted to give was on the 16th of October, at about 3 in the afternoon. There was a juvenile waiting for a ride, and a man pulled up and offered to give that juvenile a ride. The suspect at this point went as far to even offer money to the juvenile to get inside the car. The juvenile was sharp and declined. We got the call, and after significant investigation, the beat officer was able to find some leads, even though the victim could not describe the car or provide a plate, and the car itself ended up being a borrowed car. But that officer then 2 days later was able to arrest the suspect, identify and arrest the suspect on a warrant, and the suspect was found to be on probation for a separate stalking case out of Contra Costa County. So just wanted to give an example of proactive police work that we're proud of, and a reactive investigative case that we're proud of. In regards to policies, other updates, a couple weeks ago, the chief mentioned active bystandership for law enforcement training and how we're bringing that to the department. If you hear us, we'll probably just refer to it as ABLE training. And so we're in the process of selecting instructors for that class now. My understanding is they do a train the trainer model. So they will train us first, and then we will train all staff. It's going to be quite an endeavor because I think the maximum class size is about 20 people that they recommend. And so we have, I think, about 250 employees. So it's going to take us quite some time to get through that training, but we think it's important. I particularly am bringing it up because I want to let the board know. I know the chief brought it up, but this is additional training that we're bringing on to promote a culture of leadership here at the police department at all levels. And so it's in addition, it's not a substitute for any other training that we're doing. So we're still going to be doing FIP, CIT, de-escalation, all other trainings that are required by policy or required by law. It's just something additional that we want to make a part of, or strongly make a part of our culture here. The other thing I wanted to talk about was we continue to sign up for 2 spots every single month in the week-long CIT class. And anytime we're able to get any officers into that class, if staffing allows, we get them there. So we're trying to do everything that's expected and then some. Another update, I mentioned last month that fixed camera was installed at 6th and University. It was the first fixed camera installed after the 2 that were already in place in the city. We've been in communication since our last meeting here with Public Works and have tentatively decided on 3 locations for the next fixed cameras. So those locations are going to be 7th and Dwight, 62nd and King, and Ashby and College. And we'll have, I believe, 6 additional locations. No, there were 10 cameras total. So yeah, so 6 additional locations after that. And all of those locations were identified to us by council. One follow-up item, the director already beat me to a couple of trainings. We are also at IACP and we're on the wait list for NACOL. We'd like to get somebody in NACOL we have not attended in the past. And finally, Chief Lewis sent Director Aguilar the list of policies that have been issued since PAB's inception. That was requested by board member Leftwich last month when I was last at the PAB meeting. Our policy sergeant was able to run a report showing which policies were issued to the ODPA. It's important though, and I want to stress that it's a pretty long list of policies, but it's all policies that were sent for review and acknowledgement to our officers that become part of our policy manual. So therefore, it consists of policy conversions from our general orders, as well as any updates to existing policies and new policies as well. So there's a lot of policies there, but a lot of them might have already been there. So don't think that these are all new policies that came over the last year and a half. And that's all I have, and I can answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you very much, Captain Durbin. I cannot see the board, so I'm going to ask the director to handle all the questions from the board members.
Sure, since we have board member Leftwich.
Thank you. Thanks for that update, Captain Durbin. And I appreciate, the chief providing a list of the policies that you just mentioned. I was kind of alarmed when I saw the number because I think it's like over 100. And as I had expressed before, the concern, I had raised this in the context of lexical conversions because, as you know, the Berkeley, beginning the term, but the previous policies that the department had are much more progressive as a general rule than lexical policies. And so the PRC was very active. We had a lexical subcommittee that was very active in going over with a fine tooth comb the policies as they were being converted. And we haven't done that because we were so busy with our regulations, the PAB, that we are way behind on lexical. So if there is some way for someone, you said don't be too worried because they aren't all lexical conversions. If somebody could segregate out that list, it would be really helpful so that we would know which ones are in fact new lexical policies. Because that is something, I don't know when we're going to get to it, but I'm very concerned that we haven't gotten to a lot of them.
I'll take a look at, I think, I don't know if it can actually be done by going back, but I can probably just look at them and tell you, okay, this was something new. Obviously, the surveillance technology policies we're familiar with are all new. Those would obviously stick out. The number of conversions I should be able to tell, but just the small updates, I'll have to ask our policy sergeant. I don't know if those would stick out because sometimes it's just a legal change. It goes back, we review it, we accept it, it gets distributed. So it could just be sometimes as much as a sentence or some words to a policy.
Right. Okay. Well, I'd appreciate it if you could take a look or have somebody on staff take a look just to segregate some of those out so that we would know which ones to focus on.
Okay.
And you mentioned a new pursuit policy. And it would be great if the board could be given a heads up about that policy. I think under the charter amendment, it says that we should be given a copy 30 days after it takes effect or something like that.
Mhm.
But previously with the PRC, we were given policies in advance and given an opportunity to work with the department on them before they went into effect. So if you could just try to keep us in the loop about that policy, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, no problem. That's why I brought that one up tonight. It's a big one that that we pay special attention to. It's V6 is the current policy. And so we're looking at it now and determining what needs to be updated or tightened up. So that's going to, but that's a conversion. So that's from V6 to whatever lexical policy.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, so that might be a good place to start then, for us getting involved. And then lastly, we had a body worn camera subcommittee that I was on. And we had several meetings and we met with Captain Okies and Sergeant Ledoux and another member of the department whose name I'm forgetting right now. And we had very productive meetings. And then we were told that the department has actually decided to revamp the policy on its own. And I've checked back in a few times to see where that stands and been told that it's kind of on hold. And I'm just wondering if you could look into that for us, because it was a very active subcommittee, because we did have some concerns and we were engaged in productive talks with the department. So I would love to resume those whenever we can.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, that was yeah, I think there were at least two command staff members on that subcommittee, and I wasn't aware that it was down. So I'll follow up on that.
Thank you.
We also have Mr. Chair, Board Member Blackaby.
And then I know Board Member Calvi as well. My question is pretty fast for Captain Durbin. You talked about the fixed camera timeline and the implementation of the camera. And noticed, I think the council just approved the contract with Flock on the ALPRs. Do you have a sense of sort of the timeline from here on how that rollout and implementation is going to work?
We're hoping for December, but it's still under some review. IT has to take a look. Public Works has, City Attorney's Office has, and so we're getting very, very close. But October is what we're hoping for. And so we were always giving ourselves a little buffer by saying winter, but end of the year was the front end of that goal, and we're hoping to keep it.
Great. And then the locations you still have to share with the council. Again, I'm just trying to understand the steps before that sort of goes live. There's still a review of the locations that happens at the council level before that goes, right?
Yeah, complete approval of the contract, and then we'll share with council the recommended locations.
Thank you.
Board Member Calavita?
Yes, thank you, Captain Durbin. I'm interested in the ABLE program. And you say there's going to be a series of trainings, 20 officers at a time type thing. And in the past, board members have mentioned an interest in attending some trainings. And I, for one, think that this would be a really interesting training for some of us. If there's interest, I know I would be interested to attend and see what that ABLE program is all about and see how officers are being trained. I'm wondering if there's that possibility.
My first thought is that yes, I have to check with ABLE staff. So they will do a train the trainer, which means we will be sent to a training early, whoever we select. And then once we roll it out to all of our officers, that's going to be an 8-hour, our officers and staff. That's an 8-hour training, and that won't be until at least several months from now. But yeah, I don't see issues with that.
Okay, I don't know how we would proceed, and I don't know whether other board members, but I for one think that would be really interesting, just as a silent observer.
Yeah, and I believe, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's all.
I believe at some point we sent the board a link that you could learn more about ABLE. I think so, but
yeah,
I can double check.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it because I've read about it elsewhere as well. I think it's really important program. The other thing is I wanted to follow up on the issue of locations of the flock cameras. I know there was a discussion in the board and council about that typically flock has a great deal of input in terms of where their ALPR cameras go, and I'm wondering whether that will be the case here in Berkeley as well, and how those decisions will be made on the ALPRs.
Yes, they will have. We will be relying on their expertise and their experience and just traffic flow patterns and so forth. But it won't end there. We'll take a look as well, and I'm sure there will be other feedback from other stakeholders and city community members on where they should be.
And then will council have some input on that too, or decision-making powers?
Well, it will go to council, the locations. And so the exact format it will go, I'm not 100% certain yet, but I was most likely an off agenda item, but.
Okay, and then thirdly, with regard to new policies, you mentioned one particular new policy, the pursuit policy that is being worked on now, and that in the long list of policies that we were sent, some of them are conversions and some of them are new. And I want to reiterate also, as Board Member Leftwich did, that in the charter amendment, it says that we must be at least notified, engaged with within 30 days of their implementation. I know the chief had subsequently made told us that in fact she would be committed to providing them to us ahead of time. And so I think on policies that are truly significant, like the pursuit one and others. I haven't had a chance to scrutinize that list. But I just wanted to put in a plug once again for being engaged on the front end of those policy making processes.
I understand, and that's why I was hoping that just bringing V6 forward today to let you know, because I figured that would be one that people would be interested in. And that's why I particularly brought it up. So I did want to let you know that we are working on that policy and give you the backstory of why it's important right now that we really look at it. So
Right. Thanks. That's all I have.
Is there anyone else, Director?
No one else from the board, but I do just want to have some questions, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair.
Of course.
Captain Durbin, I just want to commend you and the department for the ABLE training. I also want to express our interest to a staff, if possible, we could participate. I did just want to also clarification. I know that the ABLE was also tied with the KIND policing initiative in the MOU. Is the ABLE training required for officers, or is it going to be whether they choose to participate or not to get that incentive?
No, it'll be required training. It'll come out as a departmental order from the chief.
Okay. Thank you. The other comment was if there's anything that we can do for the Lexipol review, as you mentioned, or as you know, we also have access to it. Like, we want to delegate any particular review for us as a staff so we can get back to board member left, which we're happy to see what we can do there.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah. And my concern has always been, I completely understand, and our concern is to continually move work forward so that the officers aren't the sergeants and the policy sergeant and those review. We're moving things forward and we don't stall too long. And so it's just a matter of efficiency, but I completely understand the board's concern with wanting to review those policies. I do know which ones are the ones that are of heightened concern. And I just want to reiterate, when there is a concern or you want to look at something, even if it's been published, it's never beyond the board's purview to bring that forward to us and say, hey, we're concerned, or we'd like to know why this policy is written this way or that way. So, but we do want to keep moving them forward and keep issuing them.
Thank you very much, Captain Durbin. Is there anything else? Any other questions from board members? Director?
I don't see
Staff?
any hands here, sir.
Excellent. I want to thank you, Captain Durbin. I appreciate you taking the time and answering our questions and your report.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Good night.
Take care. This brings us to agenda item number 8. This is our subcommittee reports. At this time, I'm just gonna turn the meeting over to board member Calvita, who happens to be the chair of policy and practices relating to the downtown task force and bike unit allegations.
Thank you, Chair. And in the interest of efficiency and time, I'm the chair of both that subcommittee and the Fair and Impartial Policing Subcommittee. And we're working simultaneously on each of these. And I reported on them 2 weeks ago. I don't have anything particularly new except to say that we're in the process of scheduling another meeting, and that we still hope to have these reports on the downtown task force and on fair and impartial policing within the next weeks to the full board. So that's it for each of those.
Excellent. Thank you, board member Calvita. That takes us to agenda item number 9. That's new business. A, discussion and action on the PAB ODPA annual report. Director, I'm going to turn this over to you. And for me, it's very hard to see hands or even people. So I'm going to go ahead and direct the conversation very loosely. Director, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, sir. Mr. Murillo is queuing up the PowerPoint, and while he's doing that, I just want to preface it that we do think the annual reports are a very valuable tool for not only you, the community. It's not our intention to have this report go out this late during the year, and this is for many reasons this was unusual in terms of the process for this, but we do endeavor to have this within the first quarter of the year to coincide with the police department's annual report. So that is, just wanted to preface that. This is also another thing to consider. This is telling the story of the transition from the PRC to the PAB ODPA model. So that's why it might be a little bit more lengthy than probably anticipated. But again, we produced a report with the intent of covering all the corners and all the points that are required within the charter and anything else that we felt might be relevant. But it is under the charter up to the board to approve it or modify it in any way before it goes to council. So we're open to any additions, amendments, some stuff that has already been brought to our attention. We are already rectifying. So we do appreciate the feedback in the comments. This is your opportunity here to discuss any items that you want to, as a board, consider in terms of amending. We did prepare this PowerPoint presentation. It's just a quick review of it, and then we'll open it up to the board to do a more meticulous review. So, okay.
Yeah. So again, as the director mentioned, this PowerPoint really focuses on 3 areas. One is just giving the community a brief overview of what's mandated by the charter and what has to be included in our report. We're providing just a brief overview of what data sets we use in generating our report. And of course, some specific sections of the report that were flagged to us just for review and further explanation. So we'll go ahead and start there. So the charter requires us really to have 6 main areas that we cover. One, of course, being the board's activities. The second just being the general procedures that we use when we're investigating misconduct. We have to provide an overview of the BPs, the training, the education, and early warning system usage as part of the charter mandate, as well as addressing any policy issues that came up through complaint investigations, and an analysis of the stop data and use of force data collected by the BPD. And this is something we mentioned prior to bringing this report, but essentially all reports that the board is going to be published need to go through a legal review first. That step has already been completed. The step that we are now is essentially we're bringing it forward for your feedback and eventual approval before it goes on and is presented to the mayor, city council, the city manager, chief of police, and at a city council meeting. So. And this is just a list of the data sets that we used. Of course, we have our internal data that we collect. It's our complaint data, anything from the demographics to the allegations is data that we collect and we report on. Of course, our attendance records, both for the city's records in terms of the clerk's office and our attendance records for our participation and logging how much work the board does. The COVID era, I know it was unpopular in terms of the Zoom meetings. There's a bit of a learning curve, but it did provide us with a lot of data in terms of how people are engaging with us, for how long they're engaging with us, if there's specific parts of the meeting that they're tuning in for. So it provided us a lot of useful data to that end. The BPD also provided us their internal affairs complaint data. Again, this is just the number of complaints, types of allegations. And then, of course, we have the RIPA data and the use of force data. And RIPA is really the stop data is most commonly what it's known for stops. I'll take you over here.
Just to emphasize this is something I think that is really going to be useful for our comprehensive outreach plan and being able just to see where we're getting participation. It's going to help us message these different activities of the board better to the community and to engage them better. But I think this is, again, very valuable piece of information that we have. We didn't do a qualitative review of the meetings, and I think that is potentially something we could do in the future. But this is just more so the quantitative numerical analysis and collection of data there. The complaints filed by ODPA, again, we had to also look at, or part of this process, we looked at the PRC historical data. And we're also finding ways to streamline our data collections and emerging data sets, so we have the opportunity to do better analyses in the future. But this is just a good overview. It's also embedded within the report itself of the complaints that have been filed with the PAB and the PRC over the last 20-year period. Okay. We did have a question about this, and I suspect that you're probably going to talk about it or comment, but we had a concept there called the agreement rates. As you know, this is a collaborative process. The office conducts the investigation, presents it to the board. Our findings may differ from each other. Then it goes and may go to it goes to the chief, and the chief's findings may differ from us, and it could potentially then go on to the city manager. So we wanted to capture that and present that, and we called it the agreement rate to see where we all were on these things. To the board member Wilson's comment, though, it wasn't something that was well explained within the report itself, but this is on the back end, and we can include that information there. It's too small to see, but this is essentially what we did. We looked at all the allegations, and then we're able to conduct a rate on the bottom over here on the right column to see where we agreed across the different stakeholder groups. So that's how we got that data, and we can more than happy to provide more information in the actual report or attach these two tables to the appendix if need be.
Can you just remind me, so we send our report and findings, recommendations to the chief of police.
Yes.
The chief of police can accept, reject, or whatever, or not reject, but chief makes her own findings.
Well, the chief is, anytime we receive allegation or complaint, the chief is under the internal affairs, they're already conducting their investigation. So she's going to have two reports and review both of those to make her determination.
All right, so the 46% is the percent of agreement with respect to the allegations we've identified in our report and our recommended disposition, and the chief's recommended disposition or decided disposition about those same allegations in the report that she receives. She's basically got two reports that list the same allegations.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And
are you sure?
With an asterisk, I was going to say that it's not always cleanly done that way. That one of the issues that we found is that the complaint forms look slightly different. Mm-hmm. So sometimes when they start their investigation, they might be categorizing it in a different way that we're doing. So those are the kind of things that we were trying to rectify or trying to look at closely that might explain some of these things. But for the most part, the categories are like use of force. I mean, that might look the same anywhere. So.
Okay, and then when does it go to the city manager?
The city manager, it goes if there's an option for the director, if they want to, if they don't agree with the chief's findings, to elevate it up to the city manager.
And what is the percentage of I don't know what the N is, our report, or what percentage of cases are you elevating things to city manager?
I would need to look at that number closely, and during this 2-year period, there weren't, I can't tell you that number, and we didn't include it in here, but
yeah. But I think it's important because the N is pretty small. Right?
That you sent forward?
That you sent to the city manager. Because there's not that many reports altogether,
Right,
so it has to be pretty small.
yeah.
And then you're saying the city manager, that 42% relates to city manager's disposition with respect to the allegations. Like the difference between what we recommended and what the city manager ultimately determines. That's what that 42% is.
Yes.
Yes.
So the city manager agreed with us at 42% of cases, and then the 100% is what?
Between the chief and the city manager. So if we were to send it forward to the city manager, they're always historically have been on the same page.
Then why is one 42 and one is 46?
Different and
Yeah, the
Mhm.
different allegations. So the chief might have, the city manager may have overruled or may have saw it differently than the chief in some occasions on the allegation level.
Mhm. Okay. I think the numbers would be helpful.
Okay.
those are the ends above the percentage, right? Like that's the, like, it's like 13, 8, that's what those numbers are.
Yeah.
Above.
Yeah, I think including that.
Yeah, yeah. 'Cause that's why the 42% and the 46%, you would expect that if there's 100% agreement, but it's because the universe is a different size. And that's why you get 40%.
Can I ask another question about this, or is?
Yes.
is where it's at? So if we were to segregate this based on the disposition, it wouldn't be 46 and 42%. It would be, because this is total, both sustained and.
Right, so there would be a difference, like you're, essentially, if I'm understanding is, if we're just looking at unfounded, for example, if those percentages would change, correct?
Right.
That's gonna be much higher.
So
Right.
this is a content neutral, like, percentage where they might agree with us on 10% of sustained charges, so to
Mhm.
speak.
I
But
think that's a great point, and we should include a graph on that.
Okay,
Make
I
that
think that's the
distinction.
most important.
okay, so segregated by each type.
I think
Okay,
it needs to be segregated, because if,
Well, the total is helpful too,
right,
maybe like an additional one.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I think one of my comments, I think this is one of the most important sections of the report, actually. And it's a little varied because of how much comes before it, and then, yeah, it could just benefit from keeping this part.
Want us to still hold off on other comments?
If you have more comments on this, we just have a few more slides or.
Excuse me. Where's my?
Oh, I have one last question on this is, so, okay, this is back to what board member Wilson was saying. So I had just assumed that the only ones that go to the chief or the only ones that go to the city manager are instances when we have sustained findings, but you're saying they get, because the chief is already doing her review on the IAB report, and so she may be looking at stuff that's sustained or unfounded or exonerated. So she's looking at all those things.
Yeah.
And the city manager, is the city manager only weighing in then when there's a difference between the chief and the board?
But when the director requested, and I again, I don't know that number off the top of my head, the historical number. There have been cases where I have not sent the case forward to the city manager, and there have been cases where I have requested.
Okay. Got it. Thank
Mhm. Okay, and we also had received a question about the BPD's complaining their IAB data as to there being some overlap. There is, and again, it's because when we receive a complaint, we notify the IAB that we have received it, who may also have their parallel investigation. So they also factor into account those numbers in their data. So the data that we receive isolates, it flags that, you know, for example, 10 of these came from the ODPA, and then the rest of them are complaints that they might have received externally or internally, and that's sort of included here. So that's where that overlap comes in, because they do also record our allegations in our data. And again,
Any other thoughts?
oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, is there any other thoughts about this part of this presentation?
Move the chair up.
Okay,
Top thoughts, but I think I was gonna wait till you're done.
Sorry, I lost my mouse for a second. I keep doing that. Okay, and then this one just, excuse me, provides an overview of the different allegations as reported by BPD's data. Again, some of these allegations, as the director mentioned, they might look a little different than ours, or they might have some categories that our form doesn't.
In the last two slides of this are at the end, we had some conclusion recommendations. Now, we cut it off, the period was until the end of 2022. There's significantly more observations that we have made throughout this year that is not represented here. But again, this is a snapshot in time, so we just included what we had observed to that period. This, I suspect, that in 2023's report is going to look more specific in the very specific areas where we saw areas for improvement in ways that we can collect data in a different way, and also the analysis is going to be different in ways that we can strengthen the oversight system here.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's it. But that now we can open it up if you have any questions or comments, concerns.
Director, on this particular slide, the conclusions and recommendations, when I read through this previously, it struck me that there's a little bit of a disconnect between the some of the report and the recommendations, and I'm wondering if you could, in the text of the report, add very briefly, at least like one or two sentences about that make these recommendations, like the recommendations don't seem to develop from the report. So I'm wondering if in the report you can make reference to some of these things that need to be improved upon. Just very, very briefly, so that it doesn't seem to be such a disconnect.
Thank
I
you
know
for that comment.
I sent you a whole lot of other suggestions for the report, but I didn't, I'm just, this slide brought that to mind.
Or if the recommendations need to change, because I have the same observation, which I don't think I included in my comments, but I don't know. I mean, I think one approach is the one you're suggesting, Kitty, but another one would be to change the recommendations so they flow from the report.
Right. I'm not prepared to really think through that now, but yes, either way, maybe these are not the primary recommendations that we would have stemming from the report.
And I would say, look, and if we wanted to talk about the issue we were just talking about around sustaining objections and whether or not that carries through, it feels like a recommendation or something here would be, improving alignment. Trying to improve alignment or something, but some comment just about that. I mean, that feels like, to your point, Board Member Wilson, that's something that's really important, and that it should be reflected here at the end, that like we should see greater alignment. But again, saying that in the right way, but like, we should figure out how do we get on the same page? Like, how do we, right? I mean, we have to do our oversight, obviously, but like the rate at which our sustained findings are being supported is pretty low. How do we address that? Feels like that at least should be something here at the tail end of the report.
I also think, one of the things that I had a couple of major thoughts. One was the whole timing, which is very confusing. And I know it's difficult because we're going back because we're way behind on doing our reports. And I think other board members mentioned this, that it includes board members who are no longer here. It says to the present. That's not the present, includes staff members who are no. So there's gonna be some way to finesse the fact that this is now and that was then, and I don't know if it's so much maybe the data sets aren't, for the data is over a certain period of time, but as far as big picture, what's going on, what our concerns are, I don't know if they've changed that much over the last couple of years. And the other thing that struck me is that the beginning, the message from the chair and the director are very nice, but they don't say much, of substance. It's very conciliatory and everything. And then you have all this great data, and in the very end, some recommendations that I agree don't necessarily flow from that. And so my recommendation, because people have a short attention spans, would be to figure out what do we want to communicate in this report? What are the most important things? And include those in an executive summary or an overview or something at the beginning. Don't wait to the end. And maybe be a little more real, because I feel like we've had some very significant challenges. And I don't feel like that really came out too much in this report. So I know we want to, have a positive tone to the extent we can, but it's like, what are we trying? What do we want the public to know? What do we want the council to know? What do we want the chief to know? And that wasn't obvious to me from reading this. What are we trying to communicate?
Yeah, I agree. I think, and I don't want this to be disheartening, but I do think this needs a lot of work. I feel like it's way too long. Like, reports now, back to this issue of attention span, they're much shorter. There's a lot of online reporting now, with a lot of images, a lot less text. And this whole section with this charter required data on the BPD, this data on stops and calls for service. What we're required to do in the charter, if I understand it correctly, is analysis. We've provided a lot of data, but there's little analysis. Like, I'm trying to figure out what is the key takeaway. And I think the key takeaway should be in our report proper. And then just the charts and tables of data and the description, which is describing what's in the charts, could be like in an appendix. So that we keep this really tight with what is it exactly, as you said, like, what do we want the public to take away? What do we want council to take away? Almost like calls to action for ourselves, for council. And to your point about the agreement rate, I see another issue here. Like, we have a very low number of complaints being filed, right? I mean, that chart you showed just shows it kind of plummeting. So I think that's an issue as well. There's a generic recommendation about engaging the community, but I think we need a specific call to action for ourselves. Like, we need a metric around increasing our complaints, or looking at other communities our size that have police accountability boards, like what's an expected complaint rate, because something is happening that's driving that number way down. So anyway, I'm not sure if we're really clear about what we want our key messages to be.
If I may, just a few follow-up questions. What is the acceptable length of the report? I think that'd be helpful guidance, like from here and moving forward. The other thing, it is very descriptive in nature. I do agree with you, but we don't know what we don't know. So, like, some of the things we just haven't done an inquiry into why have they plummeted. Like, we can speculate and we can look at different patterns and within the city. COVID obviously has had an impact in police interactions, and but we got to be careful how we interpret this data and make any inferences on this data. But I agree that we need to have a more thorough discussion about what these patterns mean. We were also just restricted in that we can't really explain some of these things because we just haven't inquired about it.
Well, we could say that also.
Okay.
We know this and believe it's important for us to try to understand, what these numbers mean. We don't have to have all the answers, but we should at least be highlighting the issues.
Maybe then that also sets the marker for, hey, those are the questions we might want to answer next time. Like, at least it puts it in our head, like, okay, we don't know the answers to this, so The good news is the 2023 report's right around the corner, so we'll try it.
Yeah.
Could I also just, I think it may be an overstatement to say that, I mean, I agree that we need to do more outreach. I think that's one obvious thing that comes from the number of, the low number of complaints. But I also think that we should be careful not to overstate this. If you look at the chart, I wouldn't say that 2022 or 21, in 21, the numbers were a little bit up. So I don't think you can say that the complaint numbers have plummeted. They're down compared to the early 2000s. But the early 2000s, things went differently. For one thing, hearings were open to the public until I think 2006. And so there was a lot more sort of public awareness. But I don't know, beginning in around 2011, they've gone up and down over, a little bit each year, but I wouldn't say that in the last decade they've plummeted. So it's really just relative to the early 2000s that they went down pretty significantly, and the process was quite different back then. But I do think that one recommendation that we should have for ourselves is that we need to do more outreach. The other thing, I know that we don't want to get too detailed here in terms of recommendations, but I really think it's important not to draw any real conclusions in the report about the number of complaints we get, the type of complaints we get, and the people from whom we get complaints, like the demographics. Because somewhere in the report, it talks about the complaint process giving us a good handle on police treatment of different groups or something. I don't know, but it's really, I think, it's very unclear what we can deduce from who files complaints and how many complaints there are. So I feel strongly that that needs to be eliminated from the assumption eliminated from the report. That's one thing. Another thing that I think is going to be very interesting to the public, and I know it has been of interest in the past, is the number of administrative closures and rejections. And I found a lot of confusion in the definitions of those two things and the reasons for them. Like sometimes it says the reason for an administrative closure is that it appears frivolous or it appears prima facie not to be misconduct. And in other places, it says that's the case for rejections. So I think we have to be, because this is really of interest to the public, our administrative closure process. And I think we have to be very clear and consistent in saying what that consists of and what the reasons for it are. And similarly, in cases of rejection. Yeah, I'll stop there. But I know that I
have a few comments on this as well. I agreed with Board Member Calavita's identification of the administrative closure. There was conflicting definitions of that. And also, I was surprised to see that there was no subpoint for modification. And I found that subpoint underneath on page 23 hearing. And this might not be correct, but my understanding is that a modification can happen before or with or without a hearing, and that is an option. So I think that was one concern that I had. I also agree with Board Member Lefkowicz's point about putting these takeaways up front in an executive summary. I think streamlining that would be helpful. One thing that the board has not discussed yet, which was interesting to me, was the discussion of policy investigations, because it seemed to me, I don't know what policy investigations went on during this. You note the subcommittees, but there's no explanation of what reports the subcommittees produced, what policy recommendations they made, if they made any at all. And I think that was one thing that was missing from this annual report. And I have a few other like grammatical things that I can just email to you as well. There was also one other small thing on page 40 where you're discussing stop data, and it speaks about stop data, and this is implicit, but it's implying that we want diversity in our stop data. I think that language is not appropriate when we're discussing stops. So that is my personal opinion, but open to other comments as well.
I know I provided some feedback as well about that policy section needing to be beefed up. And maybe if you just indulge me quickly, like I would just tell you my overall like structural recommendations is to take all this stuff about the roster, who's on the board, the bios, and put that in the appendix. I would leave like the purpose of the report, but really streamline the overview of the board and the office of the director, particularly the parts before the description of the complaint process. I would outline and put the bulk of that in the appendix. Again, the idea being that we're gonna like make this shorter, but also lead with the information that is more relevant. This part about our number of viewers and public participation, I think the key takeaway is based on this, we decided we wanted a data analyst. I would like just put in like a paragraph to get rid of the chart or put it in appendix again. Because it's taking like 20+ pages to get to anything kind of, you know, the meat of the report. And then I think on a lot of the stuff where we're breaking down things by gender, the whole section on like the complaints, the allegations, sustained, not sustained, I think that's great, as we've discussed, like actually beefing up the section on the agreement rates, explaining what that is. The demographics of the complainants is a long section, and I'm not sure what the takeaway is of this at all. Like, what is it? You know, if you had to say what your takeaway is as a staff team, what for this whole section with gender, age, race, and ethnicity?
Well, we're having a discussion as a city and as a country about fair and impartial policing. And I think we need to monitor these trends. So we were trying to describe what some of these interactions look like based on these particular categories. If we needed to spell it out more explicitly or why we needed to, then, you know, we take your point or observation.
But I guess, again, I'm just like, what is our takeaway? We're showing data, but what is it we want ourselves or the public or the department or the council to take away from this? Like, it says 81 complainants have been white and 74 Black over the last 10 years. So what are we taking away from this?
We're experiencing policing differently in the city. But again, we're happy to make things more clear if you need, or we can take away things that you don't believe that are telling the story that you're trying to tell.
Yeah, I know the challenge with the complaint is that there's multiple factors. There's the actual police activity and fairness or unfairness of police activity, and then there's actual awareness of the remedies of being able to file a complaint, which might work against it, right? And so I think that's to Board Member Calvita's point. Like there's multiple factors playing into those numbers, and it's not policing is one factor, but just awareness of the channels to make a complaint is another part, and those confound each other, right? And so that's why I'm hesitant in the same way about drawing too many conclusions just based on that data, because there's multiple variables that underlie what's going on there.
But we're taking like 3 or 4 pages to provide this data with no, I just really would challenge us, like, what are the key questions we have about the data? would it, like, we have this whole figure 6 on age of complaints, why?
Or is that something that is required that we provide, some things that this report has to provide?
It could, but it could
'Cause if
be
not-
an appendix.
Right. No, I'm just saying, there's some things that we have to provide, but yeah, it could be in appendix. Because just providing a bunch of data, I don't think it's helpful to us or to the reader. If we do have to provide it, then provide it in appendix.
If I could quickly keep going, I'm sorry, I think the
Sure.
policy section should be beefed up as we've discussed, and then we go to BPD, complaints received. I think the takeaway here is they've had 24, right, in 2022, which isn't that different than our number, I think, is that right? Which is good, I would say.
Excuse me.
I'm not sure why we need a whole section on like the allegations in the BPD complaints. If this is this the BPD data, the internal affairs, starting on page 32? Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know why we need this full description of the internal affairs complaints. Again, in the body of our report, and I just don't know why. The stop data, I think the takeaway is that we still have a very significant racial disparities in stops. If you're comparing stops to city demographic. And I feel like that is our takeaway, and we should put it there and like one chart and put the rest of it in the appendix. The same, whatever our takeaway is for calls for service. So, I mean, I guess that's these are my suggestions for the whole thing. It's like, what is the takeaway from all this data that we're providing? Put that in the body of the report, put all the other tables in an appendix. And I did have a substantive question for you about this page 52 discovery rate analysis. Because I look at it and I said, oh, well, this means it's okay that they're stopping Black people more because they're finding more stuff. And I just, like, I don't even know. That's why I asked you, like, is this a standard for truth accountability work? I don't know. Again, we don't make a conclusory statement here. You just put this down. So that's it. I'll stop talking, but it's the same thing for use of force. If we don't have a key takeaway, I think it should go in the appendix as an appendix.
Are some of these data required in our annual report?
Yes.
I think with the exception of the initial data in terms of the board's activities, like the duration of the meeting, it's actually all listed as charter requirements.
I meant in terms of the complaints and the demographics of the complaints and the internal affairs.
Yes. All of it is.
Including the police department's complaints?
Yes.
Okay, so we have to include those, and I'm actually going to diverge a little bit from what some others have said, in that I believe an annual report is both simply informative and also needing to have a takeaway argument. Okay, so this annual report as it reads now is informative, and not everything, like for example, the age of the complainant, not everything is going to end up with a takeaway point, but maybe that's okay. But this is what we're doing, is we're reporting here on what the picture looks like. And so I'm agreeing a little bit with what's been said, but disagreeing a little bit, in that I think that as an informative report, it's fine to have some things that we don't then conclude from that, and here's the takeaway. On the other hand, I do think that we ought to beef up and make a bigger deal of those parts of it that are particularly significant. Like, for example, the low well, I know exactly what at this very moment, because I'm losing it, but I do think it's okay to have some things that are simply a report on information, because that's what this is, an annual report. But I also think that we have to make a bigger deal of the things that we think are particularly significant. And if that means reducing the volume of the text and moving some things to the appendix, and then that would be good. I do agree with what people have said about having an early, like, executive summary or something like that at the beginning. And the data that aren't required to be in the annual report, some of the data that aren't required, maybe we can lose them. But that's my 2 cents, that some of this is simply reporting on information, and that's okay. But I do think we ought to beef up. And I think it's really, really important not to try to make too much of the nature of the complaints and who complains. There's some sections in here that I think are problematic, because we really can't say hardly anything about very much on the basis of these few complaints that we get. And we all know also that, I mean, I assume, you know, in some cases we get more than one complaint from the same individual. And so these are not necessarily different individuals across time, across the year.
I agree with what Board Member Calavita was just saying. I also think it would be helpful just to tell our stories a little bit more.
Yeah.
As I had said earlier, I don't feel like the challenges have come across, and so I'd like to see, doesn't have to be long, but you know, just a couple of paragraphs kind of summarizing what happened during this time period and up to the present. I mean, it is tricky when you're doing something, because you need to talk in the present tense and the past tense, so it requires some finessing. But I think that the public and council need to know the story, that the transition has been difficult from the PRC to the PAB.
Mhm.
And I, for one, would say that I don't feel like the power that that we understood the public to be giving us through the charter amendment, we've been able to exercise that. So we don't want to just be complaining, but I think this document needs to let some of that come through, because that's the way we feel and the way a lot of the members of the public who pay attention feel as well. So I think we need to acknowledge the challenges and just tell the story a little bit more, in addition to all the data that I agree is important to provide and we're required to provide in some instances.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify, I'm not saying there has to be a takeaway. I'm saying that the takeaways are what should be highlighted in our report proper, and the provision of data could be in an appendix. I just can't emphasize enough, like, people are not reading 60, 70 page PDF reports anymore. It's just very few people. So I think we want an executive summary as a concept is fine, but another concept is you have a 10-page report with appendices. So if you want to just look at age and gender tables and whatever, but your key takeaways are in your report proper. That's all I'm suggesting.
Well, even if the report is 10 pages, I still think you need to have something, because some people will read maybe 2 pages, 3 pages. So whatever we want to say, and I'm not sure I'm sitting here know exactly what those things are, but whatever it is that we and staff wants to say should be said up front.
This is the first annual report since the PAB has been
Yes.
instituted.
Well, Kathy Lee did one.
My understanding, that was a director's report. It wasn't necessarily this report. So I thought that she was very intentional about making the distinction that was something that sort of captured her experiences, as opposed to what the charter required for the annual report.
I agree with board member Lethbridge that there's an opportunity to tell a story here, especially with the enactment of the new board and the powers that were supposedly conferred on this board. And you can see that in the agreement, right, as you mentioned, and also in what policies, what effect our policy recommendations have had, if we've been able to make policy recommendations in 2022. I think it'll set us up for also the report in 2023.
I would say, because I agree that there's more that needs to be said about challenges. With my lived experience here in Berkeley, most of it happened in calendar year 2023. So I was basing, or our office were looking at these general trends and patterns, but a lot of the events that have really impacted the work, they really occurred in calendar year 2023. And as I said, we cut it off at 2022. That's why and I understand the PRC members and the PAB in the early stages may have experienced something different. We just didn't pull from those experiences to make it to the report.
Right, and then again, you can say, it happened and continues to the present. I mean, we don't need to, just be looking this particular point in time and not speak for what's happened since then, because a lot of the same stuff is happening. And I also feel like we spent so much time just on our regulations, and the report mentions interim regulations, but it doesn't. I would like to see a little more emphasis on the fact that we have spent all this time. We still don't have our final regulations, right? And we spent so much time working on those and working with the department, and now we're in negotiations, and so even though we're focusing on the past, I think it's good to continue to bring people up to speed. So if somebody says, "Oh, gee, I wonder what's going on with the PAB. Oh, here's their latest report," and they read all this stuff, I want them to get a flavor, of what's happened with the specific data set for that time period, just kind of the bigger picture.
Would you be open, I'm sorry but to us amending this to include 2023, and that way now we're talking about a 3-year story rather than, because our intent was again to get this out in this calendar year, but now we are where we are, so it might be more advantageous to now just include the data for this year.
That's what I was gonna recommend. I mean, we would not be in compliance, right? But I was gonna recommend just postponing this until the end of the first quarter 2024 and having the report go through 2023. That will give us time. Because if you want any board member help, like I'd be very happy. I'd love to work on revising it and give time so it's not like so stressful. And maybe you could do a memo to the council just saying like, hey, we know we're acknowledging we're out of compliance. This is why, and we're going to give you this amazing product in the first quarter of 2024.
I'm open to that. I think one thing would be helpful in this process to really just define some of these things. Like this is very helpful to me, but I see that our interpretation of what was required may have been a little bit different from yours. Like when we looked at demographic information, which is stated in the charter, but there's just kind of this concern that we're looking at too many demographics. So maybe those are things we can negotiate. What are the key demographics and variables that we're going to look at? And then how do we tell the story that we're trying to tell? But again, I think that was the tricky part of this, is like we're looking at the charter and clearly we're reading it in different ways, still all being consistent, I think, generally, but there's clearly other interpretations about how to tell the story. So,
well, the board member Wilson's point. I mean, I have no problem with having all of those facts somewhere. It's so my problem is not the facts or the charts or the whatever. It's just how they're presented, whether you put them in the bottom of the report, whether you put them, I think it's fine to have all that demographic information, but then where you can draw conclusions, you draw conclusions, where you can make recommendations, and the facts themselves sit somewhere else for anyone to review at any point.
I think it's a great idea to combine 22 and 23.
Yep.
And in doing that, I think the one section that really needs to be beefed up and also helps tell our story is the section entitled Board Activities, which has a chart, but really just has only one paragraph of text. And I think we really need to spend time in that section talking about the arduous nature of and time-consuming nature of developing interim regs and then permanent regs. And I mean, the various things that took so much of our time and energy really need to be highlighted there. Because you have the number of meetings and the number of hours, and that's pretty impressive, but I think that we need more text on that. That's really, in a way, the essence of the report, the board activities.
A motion to, okay,
Beat me to the question. Was that a motion?
yes, so I'll make a motion that we delay the finalization and submission to the council of the 21-22 board report. Feel free to wordsmith this as needed until the first quarter of 2024, and that the report will include 2023 data as well. So it will be a report for 2021 through 2023. And the director is asked to send a memo to council explaining board's action and the reason for the delay in the report.
Second that if you're.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay. I'll go ahead with the roll call vote. Chair Moore,
Yes.
Board Member Calavita,
Yes,
Board Member Leftwich,
Yes.
Board Member Wilson,
Yes.
Board Member Blackaby,
Yes.
and Board Member Cayetano.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Okay.
I could just also say that in the memo to council, one of the reasons that this is delayed is because we have vacancies. Right, we've had, I wanted them to understand that we've been working very hard, those of us who are on the board, but there have been vacancies and there were vacancies in staff. And so there were a lot of issues that we had to deal with. And that's why. But we want them to have the focus.
Thank you, Board Member Leftwich.
The chair, real quick, I just on behalf of the board, and thanks to the staff, because I know there's a ton of work just pulling all this
Yes.
stuff together. And so I also don't want, anyway, I want the takeaway to be, we want this to be the best possible. We know a lot of work already. And we appreciate the work already, and we just want to, participate and help make this as strong as it could be. Because I think this is our opportunity to really communicate effectively. So we just want it to be as effective as it could be. But appreciate all the work, because I know there's a lot of data, a lot of work product already. So thank you for
Yeah, and also just piggybacking on that to stop, if you want any of our help to like get in there and do the hard work on this, like just reach out, in a way that doesn't violate the Brown Act. But I think you as staff, I mean, I do this in my own job, can put together your own little group of a couple of board members to help you without violating the Brown Act.
Thank you. So that's going to take us to agenda item number 10. That's public comment.
Okay. It's already set up. Okay, so as we did earlier in this meeting, I'll start with those physically present and then move on to those virtually attending. With that said, 3 minutes on the clock.
Thank you very much. I'm having a little time not relating pretty much everything I talk about in some way, shape, or form with Palestine, what's going on there. How does that relate to Berkeley? Well, well, I asked that question. I'll answer it. The thing is, with People's Heart and Gaza, 90% of the people living there were left as a result of the Nakba in 1948 and moved to Gaza. Many of the people living in the park right now have lived in previous encampments that have been raided and they've been pushed, and thusly they're in People's Park. Electricity was cut off in People's Park by the university. The electricity has been cut off in Gaza by the Israelis. The water was cut off in people's, while it was cut off by the Israelis. Much small, not to be compared, except minutely, but very similar in what's going on there. And fentanyl takes the place of the bombings that have been going on there incessantly. Fentanyl has been killing people instead of bombs. They get bombed on the inside by fentanyl. There are similarities that can result in a similar situation at some point if it's not resolved before that situation happens. Now, the Berkeley police have been very, aside from talking to people that park individually on warrants and stuff, during the massive sweeps by the Highway Patrol and the UC Police Department, the Berkeley police have stood back when things happen. They've been more on the outside, and that's appreciated what they've done. There's not animosity going towards the person. I just want to make it clear that situations have a boiling point. Gazans have had their boiling point. People's Park is having this boiling point coming up. The regions are getting ready to do something. We get that feeling. And so if you can prevent that in any way, shape, or form, or at least monitor it when it goes on and prevent excessive situations. Because this is going to be different than previous incursions into people's. I just want to put that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, do we have any virtual attendees who would like to provide? Oh, sorry.
I didn't raise my hand.
Go ahead.
This was just a question about the annual report, which I have not fully digested by any means. But I too second the idea that, and I don't think anyone disputed this, but there's a lot of information in here about the demographics that the public doesn't get to see those, except for, we'd have to do Public Records Act requests to see that. So I do think it is great to have that kind of information somewhere in these reports. But one thing I was struggling to find, for example, on page 58, there's a chart of the BPD allegations, the different types of allegations, and then you can see which ones are sustained. And I couldn't find a similar table like that. I saw a distribution of allegations for the PAB, but I couldn't find what were the two sustained allegations. I don't know if there was a chart for that, or maybe that was a narrative, or I don't know. There's just, because you are pulling so many things, and because there's different years referenced, and some of the charts, they don't all necessarily have the years. So it's a tough job you guys are doing to pull all this together, and I really appreciate it. I know I've been looking forward to seeing this, and I will look forward to seeing it in its final form in the next few months in early 2024. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, are there any virtual attendees that would like to provide public comment? Okay. Kit Saginor, you have been granted permission.
Hi,
The clock has started.
thank you. Hi, this is Kit Saginor. I just want to thank you for the effort and thought you're putting into making your report something that will really be useful and helpful and explanatory. I really appreciate that. I'm one of the folks out in the community that cares about your work very much and wants to be able to follow it. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so I just got a message on my computer saying I must be done talking. I thought you couldn't hear me anymore. That was all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for your work on it. It will really be, it's already been appreciated and will be appreciated even more with the final product.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any additional speakers that would like to provide public comment at this time? Okay, Chair, I do not have any additional hands virtually.
That will take us to agenda item number 11, closed session.
Okay.
I-
All right. So I'll go ahead and pause the
Make
recording.
a statement.
Yeah.
before we close?
So for those physically present, if you wish to remain to hear the closed session action at the end of the meeting, we do have another room where you could wait in. For those attending virtually, you may remain in the webinar and we will return once we're done with closed session. Thank you.
And for those of us on the board attending virtually, do we close out of this and then open with the new webinar number?
Yes, there should be another Zoom link in your email. Chair, I believe we still need to forward that to you and we'll re-forward it to Board Member Calavita while we're at it.
I can't use the link, but can I just use the webinar number and password?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, Chair.
That brings us to the end of closed session where the board has unanimously agreed to the recommendations of the ODPA. And now I'm looking for someone to close out this meeting with a motion. Anybody?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
And there we have it, y'all. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for your energy and effort and enthusiasm. I will see you in person next meeting. Take care, everyone.
All right,